This is a free ankle lock instructional with my good friend Arthur Zuka. I learned so much filming this and can't wait to implement ankle locks more into my game. I was shocked how powerful these felt, as I'm pretty hard to ankle lock. After years and years of rolling my ankles playing soccer, I thought I was pretty immune, but Arthur's powerful technique really showed me otherwise. So let's get started.
When you're applying ankle locks, there are about 4 basic rules you should keep in mind at all times. Of course, like anything in jiu-jitsu or even anything outside of jiu-jitsu, as you get better, the more you can break the rules. But I'm going to give you 4 guiding principles that are going to be typically helpful for beginner to intermediate students. The first is, and you always want to think of things in the context of competition. I would advise you when you first start playing with them, first year or two, don't fall back, especially from a competition perspective. So something I see all the time, because I referee and you see this, people, when they start playing with ankle locks, they get so crazy for ankle locks and they dive back, and when they dive back, the guy comes on top. And now it's harder to finish, but you've also given up 2 points with the sweep, especially once he inevitably clears the ankle. So I always advise you to try to keep it in a butt-to-butt scenario, or just attack it when you're already on the bottom. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you want to keep in mind is attacking a straight side ankle lock versus a cross-side ankle lock, and we'll be looking at specific examples. I would always advise you to attack cross-side. Now, I'm always going to speak in terms of IBJJF because they run the most number of competitions, so that's going to capture, the scenario for most of you. Cross-side is typically better because it'll keep their knee bent and their knee flared outwards, and that's going to put him in a weak and more immobile position relatively, which is good for me. The third thing I want to talk about is catch position, okay? So I'm built, more like a coat hanger. So what that means is whenever I wrap an ankle up, there's a ton of space. So, without biting like a crazy tight, slip your foot up, point your toes, rotate and there you go. Just the length of my forearm. I have very long forearms. So for me, catching on the nice bony ridge, which is painful, just doesn't work as well. Because even when I clamp my elbow, you can feel that that's still quite loose. Yeah. Okay. So for me, it makes more sense to catch in the medial part, just south of the AC space here in the elbow, because that ensures that there's less space for the guy to slip out. So for me, the trade-off is I would rather have a meaty bite, which is, not the most painful ankle lock, versus a very painful ankle lock with more space. Now, if you're 5'4" and you're in the, featherweight division, maybe that makes more sense for you to do this. But when you're 6'1", 6 feet in the featherweight division, this is probably going to make more sense. And regardless, you want to make sure your elbow is pinched. Those are kind of the key rules for you to keep in mind. And one last one for you to keep in mind, whether you're cross or straight. When his leg is straight at the knee, it's typically a little bit easier for him to tuck this leg in and come up on your knee. There you go. It's easier for him to do that. Good. Let's go back. So my goal, this one's easy to remember. It's butt to butt. Okay. The more butt to butt I am and the more bent his knee is, go do the same thing, the more awkward it is for him to get up because it's going to force him to boast further back on his hands. So what he has to do is he has to transfer the weight to the front of his body to get up properly. But the further away I am, the easier that shift will happen. Okay? Now let's look at some specific setups and finishes. Now, one of the some of the key guards you're going to have to learn when you start to play ankle locks, probably half guard, quarter guard, single leg X, butterfly. They're all very similarly chained. They're like sibling guards. And as you shift around, you'll have to play one or the other. So you can't just play one and expect to survive when they counter, which they will. Okay. So for me, what I always really like as an entrance is cross collar and pants or sleeve. You don't even need it. Even if I had sleeve, I don't need the leg. And using my butterfly, this half butterfly position from half. It's just as easy as foot on the ground, reverse shrimp, weight shift, capture. Okay? Now that's just a basic entry for you. It doesn't matter how you got there. But from single leg X, my goal typically is secure the far pant leg. You can see that pant grip right here, whether he's standing or down on his knees. And I'm going to look to tip him to his butt as I pull the leg. Okay? Now, this is the most basic ankle lock. This is where I like to start. Start with the easiest position, get comfortable, understand the principles, build out from there. That's for anything you're working on. Start at the easiest variation, start with the lowest level opponents that are small, so that way you can see what the failures are. Now, what I want to do is I want to wrap as close to the heel as possible. The problem is, when I lift here, and he starts to, for example, rotate your knee and slip away, you start to lose the feet a lot, okay? So once I'm in this single leg X catch position, it's always going to make more sense for me to hug at the knee. So I never have to release my pitch, okay? And And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift right here. You see I'm propping this thing up, and this is the catch position. Okay, this is critical. So I don't want to just slide with a lot of tension, especially when people are resisting. You end up kind of north of the ideal catch position. So you can see here, there's that space here. And until you get a ton of practice, it's hard to get the right catch position. So don't think of sliding, think of lifting, disconnecting, and as he naturally travels downwards, I'm going to reconnect. Okay, see this little groove right here where it folds at the Achilles? That's where I'm trying to catch. It's almost to the point that I'm going to slip off. And ideally, as you become more experienced and you're comfortable and you're a safe partner, you want to add a little twist in. Okay, so watch what I'm going to do. I'm blocking his hip. Now, I of course want to get my heel over as deep as possible, try to keep him on his stomach. I'm going to lift, draw that little circle, and I'm going to catch. Now, if I catch straight, that's okay. And for beginners, it's a little bit safer to do that. A little more experienced people, what you're going to do is you're going to add a slight twist in. As we talked about in our general guiding principles, knee pointing out helps me a little bit more. Doesn't really matter. I used to do the guillotine grip. Okay, I think that's still fine. The rear naked is fine as well. You can feed the lapel. I think that's actually less important. So what I would suggest for beginners, just palm, open to chest. Now, general principle 2, I want his knee bent. So it's just as easy as shifting in. And for the first finish, you can finish straight up or pointing out. Okay, that's because my shin will start to block his hip. So as I draw outwards, I'm going to fall to my shoulder. 3 things are going to happen. I'm going to press into my lymph. So my shin and my foot are going to press away his hips. My hips are going to extend forward and my shoulders are going to pull back. At the same time, it's not just in this plane. I'm going to start to rotate downwards.
What's that?
Okay.
That's powerful.
Okay. Now, that is like kind of the most basic essential ankle lock. But the upgraded version will always be the cross side. Okay. So it's going to look like I'm in a 50-50, and we'll talk about that too, but actually still in a single leg X position. It doesn't matter how you get here, but if you look at Felipe Pena, who I know 50-50 is regarded as a stalling position, but I actually think it's amazing for footlocks. It's the same concept. This is what he does, and he did it against Gordon multiple times. He raised his hips, made the foot weightless, popped it across. And that's just a great way to enter this position. And it's a threat of, like, for example, the leg drag here that makes the ankle lock so concerning. I'm going to do the same thing. I could try to catch here, but it opens up the position. So I always catch by the knee. Okay, if you saw the Hulk do the calf slicer on Joseph Chen, it looks like that kind of entry. I'm just lowering my knee so you can see. I'm going to raise, and I'm going to draw that little circle and catch. And then when I come back in, I'm bending his knee. And we talked about this. I want your knee bent. I want it pointing out. So here, you can see I didn't get an ideal catch position, but I'm not going to readjust because I feel that it's still okay. From this position, I can definitely finish. There's a few considerations here for me. Number 1, I don't want you to grab my collar. Okay? Yeah, and like grab it, for example. It's not the end of the world. I can start to use my legs and rip and still apply the lock, but it's annoying. The more head-on I am with you, the more accessible my collars will be, or the neck and nogi. So what I do is I walk this away. Now you see how that's very difficult for you to do? Exactly. If you grab from here, it's not really an issue. Exactly. Like I don't really mind that as much. Now look what I'm going to do. I'm going to point my knees away. See how your knees kind of more neutral? I deflect it outwards. I'm going to walk back if I haven't enough already. As I extend my hips, press into my foot, and arch my shoulders back, I'm going to twist the body. Okay, and you can feel that one twist quite a bit more.
Yeah.
So when you switch an ankle lock from A, which is how I like to teach it to beginners, right? So if I have a good white belt, good fundamentals, that's how I would teach it to them. But once I feel that they're kind of moving towards blue, or they're a good blue belt with strong foundations, and I trust that they're not going to injure partners, I start to teach them to focus a little more on this. So you're stretching kind of here. If you've ever rolled your ankle, I think it's the ATFL ligament, which I have. Those are the ones that we're stretching a little more.
So it's more like a toe hold?
Yeah, a little bit, but not in the IBJJF size, maybe, mostly. Okay, so you gotta be careful. You don't wanna make it overly twisty, but just moving away from this, moving towards this. Okay, so when you have a flexible guy, so for example, I did face a very flexible guy in a competition once, and he even told me in the middle of the match, he's like, I'm rubber, you're not gonna get me. So I actually flipped the foot to the other side, and he ended up tapping to the ankle lock. Okay, now, let's look at our next layer. Ankle lock number 3, I'm sure there's a million names. Aoki, Musumeci, Doderline. Depends, I guess, when you started watching YouTube, okay? For me, like, Musumeci is the one that kind of started inspiring me with this, and I believe he showed it to Doderline, and Doderline's had amazing success with it. Again, for beginner to intermediate, or if you're just, doesn't matter where you are, if you're just starting with ankle locks, start in the butt-to-butt position, 2 butts on the floor. This is like ideal for you to get comfortable because you don't have to worry about sweeping and off balancing and left or right shifts. Instead of this single leg X position, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my outside butterfly hook a little more at the knee. Now, what do you notice that does? It points your knee outwards, which we had defined as one of our goals. And I'm going to start again with that nice ankle lock grip. If I start a little higher, you can see his foot went too far through. That's fine. I'll deal with that. We're going to adjust. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the pants right here. Okay, so detail I actually learned from a Musumeci seminar. I'm going to take my inside foot, and this time as I park on my elbow, kickstand is important. You don't want to get crushed in your own weight. I'm going to step over on his hip. Okay, now the nice thing is these guiding principles, that's the whole idea, they don't change. So remember I told you I wanted your knee bent. So there's 2 ways for me to do this. Number 1, I can push you out using my foot. This is nice because it's going to pull your foot into the right position. Did you feel that?
Yeah.
So I went right to the edge of the heel. That was goal 1. And goal 2, I twisted it in slightly. Now the twist is always safer for you if your knee is pointing out. I'm always worried about my training partner, so I'm never trying to like do something kind of nasty, even if it's, you know, very effective. Now what I'm going to do, goal 2 to bend your knee a little more than this, I'm going to press into this foot, and I'm going to shift my hips in. Did you see that? So now I'm going to switch from elbow kickstand to front of the shoulder. So one thing I noticed in the beginning is that people do this. They just sit on the side of their shoulder. And I would say that's pretty strong. But once you start to focus on putting the front of your shoulder on the ground, all the weight goes on it. Yeah. So the worst ankle lock I've ever felt was Tariq Hopstock. And he was just demonstrating it, and it felt like my foot was going to blow. It was freaking incredible. And when it's the pinch of his elbow. And it's just really one of those like golden details for me. Take your elbow, compress it as tight as you can, and start to hoist yourself up on the front of your shoulder and your foot. So now like when you go to get up, go ahead. I'm going to use my hand on the knee, and I'm going to use my foot on your hip, and I'm going to keep you pretty heavily rooted. Remember what I said? Your weight has to transfer to the front rather than the back. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to look away and extend my hips and stretch. Sorry.
No, it's very powerful. I've got very flexible ankles.
Yeah, me too. But that one, even actually my wife who's like 5 foot, when she gets that on me, I'm respecting that.
That's okay. Ridiculous.
Yeah. You know, we're gonna look now, not necessarily a different ankle lock. We've looked at the Musumeci lock, but we're gonna look at it more of a difficult position. So I guess position 1A would be down on the knee, and 1B would be standing. But we're gonna start with the knee, okay? Now, I prefer the guy down on his knee, but it's really not a big deal. There's so many ways I could get here. Oftentimes I try to butterfly sweep the guy and he posts. And this elevation of the leg will give me the single leg X position. Good, now let's rotate this way. Yeah, perfect. Good, sorry, a little less. Okay, now, from here, I'm in my single leg X position. Having a deep rib frame is important. You don't want to be on the hip. You want to be really on that rib. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my inside leg to elevate so that my outside butterfly hook can come in. And it's not that I need to wrap his foot the whole time. Why? Because I can use my armpit to pinch. Like I said, that's really important. Now look what I'm going to do. From here, I'm going to use my arm and I'm going to swim in the gap that exists. You see how far away I am from the ankle? I always start my catch really high. I'm going to elevate with my foot, slide it to the catch position. And this is a place where I like to use the collar grip. Why? Because now you have the ability to shift your weight on me. You're very easily able to mobilize. So for that, I have to make sure your knee is bent. See how it's not lazy? You see how I bend it and I rotate it up. Second thing I want to do is I want to grab the pant leg. Now we're going to assume I didn't have a good catch position. So kick your leg through for me. Perfect. All right. The guy kicks it through. Look what I'm going to do. I'm going to step on the hip. So this is to push him away. This is to bend and take the weight off. Look how I'm going to stretch his leg until it slides into the correct position. I'll do it slow. I'm going to extend, twist and bite. Do you see how your heel is sitting slightly on my rib? I don't want to turn it into like a heel hook where I twist and hurt your knee, but I want to have a little bit of a twist for control. When you go to kick your leg through, if your heel is sitting on my rib, it's a lot harder. Now we're going to finish right here. If you're brown and black belt and IBJJF, yes, I can turn belly down. That's a very nasty way to do it, but we're going to be nice and we're just going to pull. And you see when you follow, your knee is elevated and bent. That's what I want. Right here, I'm going to close my elbow and I'm going to extend back and raise my hips. Now, let's say you're like a freak. You're super flexible. Can you rotate 180 from this awkward position? Yeah, all the way over there. No, circle your butt all the way over here. Keep going, keep going. There we go. Okay. So I get here and you're just like the most flexible man I've ever seen, okay? I turn the blade up, I extend. I'm like, okay, You're not even a Winston. I need to really put a lot of juice into this. Look what I'm going to do. I'm going to tuck my elbow, and I'm going to start to come off my butt. But you see with this pant grip, it's difficult. That's when I'm going to post on the ground. You see how my butt is off the ground? That's the key. I'm going to use my hand to walk back, extend my hips, and twist. That's like probably one of the meanest ankle locks. Like that one will leave you limping a little bit the next day.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, now let's look at the same ankle lock, but from standing.
Quickly, this video is brought to you by Transparent Labs, my absolute favorite supplement brand. I love how they're all natural, with no fillers or artificial ingredients. Sponsored or not, I don't see myself ever switching to another brand because I take so seriously what I put into my body. Clean ingredients only, and I recommend you do the same. Go to transparentlabs.com and use code Jordan for 10% off your order.
This ankle lock is so good, in my opinion, that it changed the way that I pass single leg X and modified X. Because now this, when they start to attack this, it trumps everything else. So even if I have a really high bite position, again, somewhere between the knee and the calf where there's a lot of space, I'll enter, okay? And I'm going to grab the second pant leg. Ideally, what I'd like to do is stretch you out there. And now it's easy to stretch you out and catch. Do you see that? But I could do the same thing just from here. Let's say I couldn't catch that. I'm going to step on your hip and I'm going to raise you 2 feet. So this one, like, I'm pretty much all in on this. But the nice thing is I'm not exposing my back if it fails. I'm going to twist inwards and I'm going to extend. But as I bridge, sometimes the guy falls too, but it doesn't really matter. So it's just this game of, I have a high bite position, I stretch you away as I soften the bite, and I catch. And then from here, it's very easy. Again, I think you and I are both flexible in the feet, you probably a little more than me. But man, when someone gets a proper catch position, it almost doesn't matter how flexible you are.
Exactly.
Another one that I really like, and this one, it's like kind of go big or go home. The first guy I saw doing this, Lucas Valente, okay? But Diego Pato actually recently hit it too, this style of ankle lock. The specific setup doesn't matter. And again, you can do same side, which is great, or you could do cross side. Now, there's so many ways to enter, but just for you to start to play with it, sometimes you're in this position, so you don't have the outside butterfly hook. This is really nice because it'll keep you in the game. Sometimes you get here and then you have to worry a little bit about the leg drag. So
you prefer the
always, because I'm like, I do jiu-jitsu, how like a 90-year-old man invests. I'm the safest guy, lowest risk possible. So I always assume things are going to go wrong, and I need to have that contingency plan in place. Okay, so I'm never the guy that bets all on black. I don't know what that gambling sport is, but that's the concept. So here, instead of locking here, you have a few interesting defenses here. But what you're going to do is you're going to triangle your legs below the knee. Now, when your leg is straight, this actually doesn't work as well. So it's when your knee is bent. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to shoot my top leg over your shin and I'm going to triangle. Do you feel how that just gives you like a ton of counter pressure?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to extend my hip and twist my chest down just like before.
That blows my mind.
Yeah. So
especially because it's not like capturing the knee line.
I know. So I do think, like, again, general rules are really important.
Yeah.
You know, one that I really like is whenever I'm attacking a joint, I like to own and control one joint proximal, right? So if I'm attacking ankle, I want to control the knee. If I'm attacking knee, I want to control the hip and, you know, wrist, elbow, right? But there's exceptions to everything. And that's kind of the cool thing about jiu-jitsu. Yeah, this one definitely comes with higher risk because when you fail, you can be in a funny position. But it is a freaking powerful ankle lock.
And what do you mean by that? If you fail?
Yeah, so, you know, sometimes I'm here. Maybe I lose the foot, or maybe you collapse my knees and I'm exhausted. Now I'm here. But again, it's not the end of the world because when you come up, you feel that it feels a little funny on your knee.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a little easier for me to rebuild, but there is a chance that you come up and I end up in a bottom side or a bottom stack or a leg drag.
I see.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But again, for you to finish the leg drag, typically you'll want to finish with your foot tucked under, but there are chances in examples where you're going to come up on your right foot. So
Exactly.
that's why for me, I always lean towards the more safe ankle locks. For my anniversary, or our honeymoon, I would say, my wife booked a trip to Japan. And there's a tournament I always wanted to do, Asian Open. At that point, I hadn't trained for years. And she's like, surprise, we're doing the biggest tournament, like one of the big ones, right? Asian Open. I think I had 5 fights, and my first 4 were ankle locks in a minute. So when I'm tired, or I have no cardio, which is most of the times, I'm just going to look for the feet. And I highly advise that you consider that as one of your strategies if you're just not a cardio person. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I think is probably one of the most powerful ankle locks. I do think the Musumeci is probably the most, but this is probably my personal favorite. Okay, 50-50. Now, how do you get here? Again, there's a million strategies. I don't think it matters that much how you get there, but I just want to show you the ankle lock finish itself. The entries will be dependent upon your knowledge of the guard positions, entering, exits. Let's not get into all of that. Now, you're going to notice I say this for all ankle locks. When I wrap an ankle lock, I almost never wrap here, right? Entering here is actually quite difficult, I find. And the more extended I am, the more open things are. Exactly, okay? But that's okay, because this could force me to the Diego Pato ankle lock, right? So you see there's options. But this is what I like to do. So initially, I don't keep my feet on your hips because I want to be closer, especially because I'm lanky, especially for my weight class. So watch, I'm going to take my top hand and I'm going to weave in at the knee. So maybe I have a clamp originally, secure, open, and weave. You see how I'm elbow deep? But just like before, I'm going to raise, slip back, and catch. Now, am I in the right catch position? No. But it's not the end of the world because you can always adjust later. I just want to get somewhat in the ballpark, okay? Now, if you think of the new changes to the IBJJF rules, brown and black belts can rotate inwards on the ankle lock, but white to purple cannot. So that's another reason why I'd always encourage you to go outward. Okay, so check out what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go from feet on the ground to stepping on the hip with the top foot. Can you feel that just the increase in counter pressure? So it's always being rooted to something. But if I can root you down to the floor as well, it helps. Second foot on top. Pinched ankles. Now, we already talked about this. I want your knee bent. Do you feel how that kind of immobilizes you a lot more? And again, we talked about this. So it's just going to be similar elements that you've already seen in different positions. I'm going to walk back on my elbow, and now I'm going to extend my hips and twist away. That's it. Okay? And I put very little force there, right? And again, if you're here and you're so unhappy with your catch, it's easy. Shift your hips out, re-bite, and come back in.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah,
more.
I just didn't want to, put it unnecessarily tight. And again, the lankier you are, the more you have to clamp your elbow, okay? For me, this gap is massive inside my elbow. So for me, learning to clamp my elbow was one of the biggest things. A huge mistake I see, because I'll get a lot of privates on ankle locks, people do this. I don't think it's a mistake. I just think as a beginner, it's a high risk. They open their arm like this to make the adjustment, and then they punch it back. I highly discourage that. Do this instead. Lift up and then move downwards. Traveling in a direction that follows your spine rather than 90 to your spine. This, sometimes all it takes is for the guy to slip his foot out. Okay? And just as an aside, I would caution you against that. So what happens is, and this happened to me once, really sucked. I felt that the guy was loose. So I went to slip my foot out, and as I was slipping out, he decided to re-bite. And he ended up catching the perfect bite, okay? And you'll see when you catch there, there's actually very little resistance you can offer there, which is very scary.
Yeah,
okay?
That's more of like a shallow bite.
Yeah, exactly. But see, when you go for this perfect bite here, sometimes you risk losing it.
Sometimes I go for the shallow bite and I can't quite get the finish. Do you have any?
Here?
Yeah.
Twisting. So when it's straight, it's actually very easy to slip past it.
Okay.
As you rotate it through, you actually catch the inside of the heel, which is a broader obstacle. So you have a nicer landing pad. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, let's show that.
Yeah, so look. Yeah, this is super common. People catch, and they're always, that's why beginners, I say, don't worry about to the nanometer, be in the general area. So you see where that bends when I flex your ankle, there's this little V.
Yeah.
You want to be at the peak of the V as a beginner. Now, the better you are, the lower you're going to catch, right? But you see how this is easier to miss? When you rotate the foot in, you end up catching a little more on this broad surface. So it's a little more forgiving, okay? But again, you got to scale your way up. Catching here is going to come later. Catching here, it's a little more risky. So don't worry about the perfect catch. Worry about a pretty good catch and make everything else pretty good. For me, with my students, I always teach butterfly as a base. I just think it's easy to get to, and that's why I think for beginners it's a fantastic guard. It's a simple game if you look at Adam Wardzinski. I also think it gives you a huge leverage advantage. Okay? Now, from butterfly, I like to go to modified X. Okay? I think X is very good too, but sometimes people stuff my top foot and it collapses both legs, and this guy especially loves the bucket step. So I think this is a lot more effective. What do you notice about your knee? It's already pointing out, okay? And the other nice thing about this is I can shift the weight between the two legs. So if I want you here, I can sweep you. If I want you here, I can take the weight up. You see how I take that leg and make it weightless? And then I slide downwards and inwards, okay?
Now, it doesn't matter how you sweep. I could do it with the sleeve. I could do it with the crawler. But the easiest way to catch the sleeve is actually to let him take a first grip. So all I do is I annoy the guy, and eventually he's going to say, there you go. And a lot of people, look at Jansen Gomez, they like to control the sleeve. Exactly. And that's when I like to regrip. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to sweep him over my shoulder. How do I know this? Because this limb is restricted, this limb is restricted. You don't need it, but we'll do it with this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my knees in, and I'm going to extend over my shoulder. Freeze. You'll see my leg stayed in position. I'm posting on my head, and I haven't released my grip. But preemptively, I know he wants to grab my collar, so that's why I turn my palm away and I start to frame. I'm going to drop my knee into his hip so he can't connect close to me. And it's so easy. I'm going to open my knees wide and extend. Now, I'm out of range where he can take an effective collar grip. I'm going to post, shift, open my knees, drop my hips, and I'm going to arch up to the ceiling. Okay, this is like, so you can actually do this kind of proactively off the sweep, but I also love to do it when people do rolling back takes. That's actually my number one setup for belly down ankle locks. Let the guy try a rolling back take. I'm in the featherweight division. People try it all the time. So
That's my favorite move.
oh yes, absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Can you show me quick?
Yeah. Okay, so here, where do you like to do it from?
We can do like quarter guard.
Yeah. So it's here. So here you've cleared my knee. This would be a little different. Like for example, if you watched Buchecha versus Rodolfo Vieira, he hadn't cleared the knee. He just dove through and to take, like, people do it from here, anywhere. Like, yeah, exactly, right there. Go for it. So freeze, right here. My knee is already inside your hip. Go for it. I'm just going to catch and roll through.
Yeah.
I adjust and I open my knees. I drop my hips and I look up and away. And these guys try it from everywhere. Now, for me, I typically never let people clear my knees. Why? Because I'm so lanky. So for me, this space has to be really protected.
That makes sense. So
Okay.
they're doing more of a diving rolling.
Exactly, from a distance. Leo Larman is another guy who does it very well. John Thomas just did a breakdown on that. So, it depends, but it's nice to have solutions to different problems because you never know who you're going to encounter. There's some big guys that play like small people and vice versa.
Exactly.
Okay, now I'm going to show you, I think, one of the sneakiest ankle locks. This is from Kyota. I just call it the Kyota lock. I don't know if there's another name. I just like to kind of give credit to who I learned it from. Can you stand up in my De La Riva? This is really nice for a couple of reasons. Because people feel really strong here and they never want to move their foot. And what people do is they dig their foot further forward, move it, and towards my armpit, because they want to stack you with the shin, right? Exactly. So the more this foot is forward, look what happens. All the space becomes accessible. Now, there's a few ways to do this, but I never want to hurt my partner. Okay, so big safety tip. If I chop down with my leg here, there's a chance I hyperextend my partner's knee. That being said, it's very strong, but I never do that. I would discourage you from doing that. Okay, so cross collar is a simple grip to take. Now look what I do instead. Because a lot of people, they grab your collar, and whenever you grab my collar, that's when I'm going to slide up and fit in the hip. Now, sometimes guys have tried to attack my foot. There you go. And this is beautiful because I actually had the leverage advantage since I'm on top. But we're not going to overcomplicate it maybe just now. Okay, so you can keep my collar, whatever, it doesn't matter. Look at this sweep. If I don't have a butterfly hook here, I could sweep and kind of keep your balance. You see how you can still kind of keep your balance? When I put in my butterfly hook, like a simple tripod sweep, I'm going to chop down on his hip, block the knee, and I'll drop it. And just like before, I tuck my elbow. Do you see that? If I sit up on my elbow, what are you going to do? You're going to grab my collar. Grabbing my collar is easiest when we're in this like chest to chest position. So I always break away. I look for my angle. Now, you'll see, and we'll talk about this, the classic defense. What do people do? Yeah, so they'll either try to attack the foot, or if I was in single leg X, they'd stuff the foot and hop over. But can you do that now? No, which is freaking incredible. This is probably the strongest finish, but the extra like 10 or 20% it adds, sometimes it's not worth it because I'm going to expose the collar grip. But in this scenario, I will, because I don't care. There's nothing you can do. I'm going to roll my collar open, crunch in, and the feeding hand always finishes lower than the catching hand. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to turn the blade up. Okay, so I want a nice little bony compression, elbow tight to my rib, and look how I twist away and I free my chest. So it's just like a deadlift. Okay.
Sorry, is the reason you grab your collar so it connects higher up? So when you extend,
it's to put a little more counter pressure. So, I have long arms, so it's not really an issue for me. But you'll find shorter guys, when they do this, they actually tend to slip out. There's so much pressure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not short-ish like stocky, but I teach a lot of stocky people. So I've kind of found this is very helpful for them. But also, if I have a guy that's really flexible, I'm going to need that extra juice. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. Now look, you see how right now it's the face of my watch? But when I point that radial bone upwards and I clamp my elbow, it's just going to give me a lot more power. I always think of tucking my elbow behind my back. Okay, now I could finish in this plane, but it's always better to twist and extend. Yeah, so this is a really nasty one. Like, you know, you've told me now you have flexible feet.
Yeah.
And if I ever attack your feet when we roll, I know I'm going to probably attack cross-side, Kyota lock, and I'm definitely going to be rotating away, right? Like, I know right off the bat, I'm not going to do a straight side single leg X butt-to-butt ankle lock on you. That just wouldn't work.
Yeah, because I'll eat that.
Yeah.
Those ones I can't eat.
Exactly. And it's the other thing about ankle locks, you know, from a tournament strategy perspective, they can be very energy expensive. So you'll see guys go hard on one for 2 minutes, guy eats it, now he's pissed and you're tired. That's a terrible combo.
That's happened to me before.
Yeah, it's happened to me. And it's those learning lessons. And that's why I kind of started off with the more easy ones, where if it goes wrong, you're not in as bad a situation. But the point here is don't burn too much juice on it unless you feel confident in the catch position. If you don't have a good catch position, use it to sweep or just, you know, use it to improve your position or just bail. Okay. Now I'm going to do just one more in a similar vein to what I just showed you. If you go back to the same position, just on your butt is okay. So we just looked at this, right? But we started with this. Now, just in the, you know, on the topic of belly down ankle locks, this is a common, what's your primary defense from here? What do you see a lot? Yeah, okay. That's what everybody does. They grab the top of the foot with the C grip near the big toe at my bunion, and they pop over. I personally don't think that's a great defense, and I'll just show you why. We can still use that Musumeci grip here for stretching to help slip to the right position. Now, as soon as you do this, look what I'm going to do. I'm going to track you with my butterfly, and I'm going to go belly down.
Okay.
This is like, I wait for this all the time. And just like before, I'm going to use my hand to bear the weight so that my head is light, and I'm going to adjust away. Okay? If you're too sprawled, you can't finish, just set yourself back a little. I'm going to use my hand to post. I'm going to open my knees and drop my hips and look away.
Oh, yeah.
I always wait for that. It's one of those things, it's like crossing your ankles in this zone and you know, they bite down from the back and tap you out. You make that mistake once and then you probably won't do it again.
If you enjoyed this and want more awesome instructional content from Arthur, check out his YouTube channel as well as his BJJ Fanatics Half Guard Instructional.